we are back with Mark, and now we're going to talk a bit independence. We already talked a bit with the Japek, and now we're moving on to Trilobe. How about that one? I really love this watch. I was very tempted, and again, you found a deal, and that was the chance to get those watches.
Yeah, this was really nice.
I love this Trilobe.
And this came up, it was sold on Loop This by an authorized dealer in the US. So it was old stock, and this one is a steel case because now they're titanium. So I think this had been a display piece and they were just selling it. And it went for a ridiculously cheap price on Loop This. A friend of mine actually bought it, and then he offered it to me for a very small little margin of profit, and I jumped at it. It's just gorgeous. I just love the way this tells the time. It's not running at the moment because it's not been wound up.
It is actually running.
Is it?
It is.
Oh, because you picked it up. Yeah,
it's
only just because you picked it up.
Yeah.
But the discs rotate counterclockwise. And when you set the time, the discs, you have to rotate them counterclockwise to get to the time. And it's when somebody looks at it, they know that something's odd about it because the discs are running backwards, if you like. But of course, it's because they're counting up, because you haven't got a fixed hand that's moving, pointing to a fixed number. You've got the numbers that are moving relative to a fixed pointer,
right,
which is the opposite way around. So of course they're not actually running backwards, but they look as if they are. It's a phenomenal piece actually. I love it. And the silver dial variant, I think, is the nicest of them. They did a dune color, sand color, which has a silver second disc.
I had it in the cart.
Did you? Really?
Because I went to the shop that retails them here.
Yeah.
And they were asking the price plus the tax.
Yeah.
Know what I'm talking about. So I went to the website and I'm like, wait, I can just order it on the website.
Yeah.
And I was very early on turned on to Trilobe, just as they were starting. And so I was very close to get it, but another watch came, was in the way. And but now that they are a few years into it, more dials and new variations. The moon now, I think.
That's
I think
bit of a...
There's some deals coming on the market like you did. And maybe when I get a deal that would be... because the depreciation will be quite strong on those watches.
This one's a smaller one. This is the 38.5mm version, which I think has slightly better proportions than the 40mm one.
Both are nice. I wish they would do one in between.
Most of my watches are 40mm, I guess, 39, 40mm. The odd couple of exceptions, the Zeitwerk's obviously bigger, and there's an Urban Jürgensen here, which we'll come to, which is bigger, 41mm. But this one just seemed to work so much better in the 38mm. So the fact that my friend managed to get it at a very, very reasonable price. It's great. And certainly for me, the silver dial is just phenomenal because it's just almost monochrome. Where the other ones, I don't know, there's something not quite... I'm glad I've got this one, for sure. And
the case is not unlike the longer case, by the way. And you get a conical bezel. How do you find the movement? Anything to mention about it?
The movement is by Le Cercle d'Horloger, which is one of these movement companies. It's a consortium of people from other movement companies. It's lovely. I mean, the architecture of it is really interesting. The only small sacrifice to costs, I suppose, is that they haven't got a variable inertia balance on there. Right. They use a standard curb pin regulator, but I don't suppose that really matters.
You got something to look at least, because most other brands would have started with a base Celita and put a module on it, and here you get an actual movement that's only used by Trilobe, I believe. And
it's quite interesting because it's got a linear train of wheels with the ratchet wheel off at a 90-degree angle. So the whole layout of the movement is quite interesting. It's something different.
I love it. Moving on to the next indie.
Well, then probably this, because this is the second most recent acquisition. And in fact, these two were, I need to have a little cloth, were purchased within the space of almost 2 weeks for the Alpine Eagle.
Don't you find that watches tend to come at the same time all the time?
Oh, yeah.
Just when you wish that there was a few months in between and you find the deals.
So this one, I'd been keeping an eye on this since when WristCheck got this back in November. Can I say WristCheck? I suppose so.
Actually, we're using a WristCheck back.
Oh, we are, aren't we? Yeah, so we can say.
Sure, WristCheck, a great business here in Central, consignment luxury watch business.
They had this since November, and I was kind of always interested in it, but at the time, I had other commitments, and I wasn't in a position to be able to purchase it. And so I kind of forgot about it, basically. But then my other commitments changed, and more recently, and I discovered that they still had it, because they didn't have it in the showroom, but it was still on the website. So after some negotiation, we arrived at an agreed price, and I ended up buying it.
White gold?
It's white gold, yeah.
Very substantial.
This is the reference 1140L. They made about 8 or 9 different versions of this altogether, 3 of which were limited editions. So there is a steel case with a champagne dial. The dial layout is the same, except that it had Breguet numerals. There was a rose gold one with a chocolate dial with Breguet numerals, and there was a platinum case with this same blue dial, but also with the Breguet numerals. And those totaled up to 100 pieces. There was 50 of the platinum Breguet, 30 of the steel one, I think it was, and 20 of the rose gold one, or something like that. And then of the remaining 5 different colourways, which all had stick markers on the dial. So there's a rose gold with a chocolate dial, there's this blue dial, there's a rose gold with a silver dial, there is a yellow gold with a black dial, and then there was also the C-type, the 1140C, which had a central seconds. The remaining of all of those adds up to 100. They only made 200 in total. And I've since discovered that of this one, they only made less than 50. So it's actually the same as one of the limited editions in terms of volume of production. And it's a fully hand rose engine cut, well, straight line engine cut on this particular one, but Guilloche dial. The hands are handmade. The movement is made by Chronode, which is a specialist movement company headed by Jean-François Maujean. And the movement is supplied all fully manufactured, fully finished, ready to fit into the watch. Beautifully decorated. It's a 4 Hertz movement with a variable inertia balance, with a few internal angles. It's not the highest level of finishing in the world. If you want that, you need to get crayon. But it's not, it's not bad.
It's gorgeous.
And it's just beautiful. I mean, it really is. It's beautiful. And some would say that this is, it's a Carry Routerline and it's kind of copying Carry. Well, actually, kind of the other way round, quite honestly. Carry sort of copied Urban Jürgensen, actually, because he apprenticed at Urban Jürgensen. Well, I don't mean that literally, but I mean, he apprenticed at Urban Jürgensen during the Baumgarten and Derek Pratt days, and was actually given permission to use the same teardrop case, I'm led to understand. And now, of course, in fact, Carry is the CEO of Urban Jürgensen, because that changed hands in 2021. I'm told that Carry didn't actually purchase Urban Jürgensen, as seems to be the common story that you hear, but the company was actually purchased by an American collector on the condition that Carry would oversee the company in in a role of CEO, and in return for that he gets a 20% stake in the company. That's what I've heard from somebody from Switzerland. So that may well be the case, but as far as we know, Carrie's in charge at least anyway, and we're anxiously waiting to see what he does with the brand, because their 250th anniversary was last year, and they missed that. But I've also heard, because the company seems to be in a hibernation at the moment, but I've heard from this person from Switzerland that there is activity now in Urban Jürgensen, and he has seen other people in there. So it looks as if they're starting to employ people, and he has seen some 3D working models of movements. By the way, the company, I suppose I could say who it is. It's Claude Giesler from Armin Strong that told me that. Claude Giesler, that told me this. So it's a fairly informed source. It's not just some rumor going around.
Well, there you go, guys. That's why I like to go to Mr. Chrono and chat with Mark, because he's always up to date with what's going on, and little chit chatters behind closed doors. There in the mountains in Switzerland. Yes.
But it's a beautiful
gorgeous,
example of an independent
so slim,
watchmaker.
substantial.
Yeah. It wears it just is. It's the perfect proportions for a watch as well.
And very deceptive, right?
Yeah.
You won't notice the watch in the wild. But
No. And to those that know, it does look like, sure, it does share many similarities with a Voutilainen.
Yes.
And the rumour is, of course, that Urban Jürgensen is going to be positioned as a gateway to Voutilainen as well, once they relaunch the brand, hopefully this year. We will see. But I have that as well, because my favourite watch is this one, which is also an Urban Jürgensen.
Well, let's put them together.
And
wow. How many people own two Urban Jürgensen?
Yeah. This one is my favourite watch because it's the watch that represents me in a watch. It's a little bit unconventional. It's a little bit overweight, a little bit odd, perhaps. And I suppose if I wanted to sum up me in a watch, this has to be it. And it's a similar story of. People probably won't know, but everybody thinks maybe that Urban Jürgensen make everything themselves. Well, the unfortunate thing is, when the company was taken over by the Danish investors in 2015, they stopped all internal production and outsourced everything to external companies. So, for example, the dial here is actually made by Metal M, but it's a proper straight line engine Guilloche dial with grenage on the outer chapter ring.
Yeah, but that is normal in Swiss watchmaking.
Not normal in a sports watch, is it?
Makes dials for top watchmakers.
No, but it's the combination of techniques that they've used to do a dial in a sports watch. But the movement is made by Chrono, the case is made by another company, the hands are made by another company, and all Urban Jürgensen actually did was to assemble everything and put it in a box. Where prior to 2015, with the Big 8 series of watches and the ones that are arguably more collectible, they were doing it in-house. They had their own Rose engines. They had there's a famous photograph of the interior of the atelier, which is a small building in La Chaux-de-Fonds, and Bienne. And there's this oval table with the cutouts for each watchmaker. So you have, I think, something like 8 or 9 watchmakers could sit at this one table in the middle of this, perhaps what would have been a drawing room or something, and when the building was a house. And it's all wood panelled all around, and you've had this idea that all these watchmakers were sitting there making everything, and they weren't. Unfortunately, they were just assembling it. It's kind of a bit of a shame, but that's what happens when investors take over a company rather than watchmakers.
That is how most watches are made in Switzerland.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Top names, and only when you make several thousand watches like Patek, you start to internalize most of the métier. But when you have 200-300 elements in a watch, each comes from a specialist in every bit. And Metal M, don't they make the Dufour?
Oh yeah, I know. It's
No,
not that Metal
no.
M did it. It's just that everybody thinks that Urban Jürgensen did everything in house,
Right.
which they didn't.
But the watch is it's stunning and it suits you wonderfully. So it's your fourth integrated bracelet.
Yeah, I do like
Really
bracelet
watch.
watches actually. I really do.
Yeah.
And this one was launched in 2019. And of course, together with the Royal Oak and the Nautilus, it was viewed alongside those as being, what on earth are they doing? What is this? It's a bit weird, and it was very expensive as well. I think it was 44,000 Swiss francs at the time. And it was kind of, I wouldn't say it was laughed at, but it was sort of sneered at a little bit by collectors in 2019 when it was first launched. It was the pet project of Søren Jorgen Petersen, the then CEO, former Nokia executive that was the leader of this consortium. And although they sold all the watches they produced, again, they only made 200. And of this GMT version, which is a fully integrated GMT movement as well, it's not a module, they only made 30 pieces.
Right, so the buttons here will
So the buttons
adjust
here,
the time
jumping
and the
hour,
button.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's quite a rare watch, actually.
Yeah, it's getting more and more recognition, and collectors seeking them out.
My good friend Angus MacDonald has always reminded me that he thinks that was a really shrewd buy, because once Carry does relaunch the brand in the end, then this might be something that might appreciate in value. Who knows? But again, that's not really the most important thing.
And staying with the indies, I guess.
Staying with the indies.
We have.
The Ophion, yeah.
Ophion. What was the story of this dial really grabs you?
This one is the Gilt Spectre, as it's known, and it was a collaboration between a quite famous collector, designer from the Middle East, a guy called Amr Sindi, who is known as Horo Loop on Instagram, and he collaborated with the limited edition in the UK, which is Pietro Tomeyer, and they approached Ophion and created this watch. So it's I think it's 40 pieces in total. The case is made in titanium, and the case is made by Voutilainen and Katin, hence the familiar lugs.
Yes.
The dial is made in Germany, as are the hands, and the movement is the former Technotime movement. Technotime went out of business 4 or 5 years ago or something like that, and they got taken over, I think, by Soprod. So Soprod are now manufacturing this movement that was formerly a Technotime movement, although it didn't look like this. The original movement had almost a full 3/4 plate on there rather than these separate finger bridges. But it's I think it's 100-hour power reserve or 80 hours, something like that. It's twin barrels.
That
Manual
reminds
winding.
me of the Hercules movement. Might be the same origin.
I don't know, actually. I'm not sure.
We'll have to check. Yeah.
But just love the design. The Breguet numerals. I'm a sucker for Breguet numerals, and they're beautifully done. And this is a very affordable watch, actually. I mean, these were sort of around 35,000 Hong Kong dollars, something like that. This one came up on the secondary market. I'd been looking for one, and it came up on Carousel in Singapore, actually. So I managed to contact the seller, and he was asking the retail price. He only wanted what he paid for it. And I had to work very hard to persuade him to hold on to the watch for me, because I was coming from Hong Kong and I couldn't send payment, and I'd have to pay him cash because he wanted a cash deal. So anyway, very graciously, he held on to it for me. So my wife and I decided to take a long weekend in Singapore. I'd never been to Singapore before either, so it was a little short vacation as well. And the guy came to the hotel we were staying at and brought the watch for me, which was fantastic.
That's how we like to do watch deals.
It is, isn't it?
And maybe another young brand, young indie that is making its way up. Ming.
Yeah, I have two Mings. This one was the one they launched 2 years ago to celebrate the 5th anniversary, and it was the last watch they were going to do at the old prices they had, and they were going to significantly raise the prices. And this was based on the more limited and much more expensive Mosaic. I think it was a monopusher chronograph, the original Mosaic. It was something that used a micro-rotor Schwarz-Etienne movement, where this one is just a sort of Salita manual winding movement. But I just thought this is just a phenomenal piece of design. And when you look at the small details, look at the case back, how the case back is actually curved, and the case back is domed, and the glass is actually domed. And if you look at it from the side, it has this perfect curve, which mirrors the curve of the crystal. And Schwarz-Etienne do a fabulous job of skeletonizing these movements and making them look something interesting, even though the movement itself is fairly pedestrian, shall we say. But, pedestrian means reliable and long-lasting and easy to repair and easy to service. But the dial construction on this, I still can't work out how they actually do that dial. And even the CEO of the company, not Ming himself, but the Malaysian guy, the other Malaysian guy, tried to explain it to me, and I still couldn't quite get how they do this, because there's several layers going on here, and it's just very, very clever design. And that's what I like about it.
And very slim.
And similarly, this one,
Slim as well,
which is really slim. Yeah, do you want me to take that off the cushion for you so you can see it better? Because it is so slim. I think it's 6mm. And yet...
It's ridiculously slim.
Yeah. Apparently, they had a lot of trouble making these because the slightest intolerance of the fit of the case back or anything, and then the movement would just grind to a halt. So it was apparently technically one of the more difficult watches, even though it looks very simple, but one of the more difficult watches to make. But I just love it. When you're looking at the dial, it almost is like looking into a black hole. The edge of the dial is this Clou de Paris pattern that seems to roll down like a funnel almost, although it's flat. But because they altered the size of the Clou de Paris pattern, it has this effect of looking like it rolls into a funnel shape. It's very clever. It's really clever.
Yeah, really original everything with Ming.
Yeah. So that's why these two will suffice for me, for Ming. I don't feel the need to have any more. But I think these represent...
Into the next one?
They represent the cleverness of design, because Ming is a really, really smart guy. Whether you like him or not, that's another matter. But he is a very smart guy, and is a very clever designer.
Well, I hear not everybody loves the pigeon, so
oh yeah,
it doesn't really matter who makes what. Now, you might not like the cook, but enjoy the result. Okay, let's take a short break, and we'll be back.